What's going on, people? Welcome to part 2 of When Black People Ruled Europe, Crest. Now, part 2, brothers, is just a continuation of part 1. We're going to continue from where we left off from. So, for those of you brothers and sisters who have not seen part 1, please go watch part 1 before you watch part 2 in order to gain context going into part 2. But regardless, I'm going to put part 1 and part 2 together in one whole video. So with that being said, subscribe, like, comment, the usual jazz. Let's get straight into part 2. Okay, so now brothers, I've jumped to page 108 because this paragraph has a lot of narrative in it, mainly the narrative of Saint Maurice. Now one more time, I'm not faulting J.A. Rogers for putting this in his book. He was working with the information that he had in his time, but it just goes to show you the lies that they were telling back then are the lies that they're still telling to this day. So we're going to read this here. So he joined with the English, French, Germans, and other crusaders in Spain and Palestine, as well as slaves, mistresses, and even wives brought from Spain and the Near East. Negroes even then were common in homes of great lords. Having them was fashionable. And fourth, African blacks of the Middle Ages or the later slave period who found royal favor or who rose to some prominence through ability or trade. Now, first and foremost, brothers, it's not the fact that so-called black people rose to royal favor. Those so-called black people were the original royals, the original nobility. But let's read on. So, who found royal favor or who rose to some prominence through ability or trade. For instance, there were Negro members of the Hanseatic League. Now, we're going to touch on the Hanseatic League a bit after I finish reading this. So the Hanseatic League, a great merchants guild of the 14th or 15th centuries. So the patron saint of the guild was Saint Maurice, a Negro foremost Catholic saint of Germany. The ornate building of the guild with its Negro heads still stand in Riga and River Estonia. As was shown, some of these Negroes with Negroes in their coat of arms took names signifying their origin, but others, when adopted into families, took the names of the latter or even other names. Thus might be explained the presence of Negroes in coat of arms of hundreds of families. Now, first and foremost, brothers, Saint Maurice is a lie. What do I mean by Saint Maurice is a lie? Now, I'm going to say this a lot in this video. When you see portraits, statues, relics, monuments, frescoes, artifacts, paintings of noble looking black men, looking prestigious, looking royal, looking regal in fine linen, if they don't go with these are exotic Africans or African ambassadors, what they do, they plaster them all as Saint Maurice. Saint Maurice is a false identity they give to all the images of noble looking black men in Europe because obviously they don't want you to know that so-called black people held rulership in Europe. Okay, brothers and sisters? Now, when it says that thus might be explained the presence of Negroes in coat of arms in hundreds of other families, or when it says adopted into the family names, it's not the fact that they were adopted into family names per se, it's that those were so-called black people's original names. Okay, brothers, those original royal and noble families were so-called black. But I mentioned so let's go back up. So it says Negro members of the Hanseatic League. We're going to quickly touch on the Hanseatic League. Okay, so now brothers and sisters, the Hanseatic League. What was the Hanseatic League? Like I mentioned, it was a guild of merchants and traders, but we're going to get a more fine-print detailed understanding of what the Hanseatic League was. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but we're just going to get a brief understanding. So the Hanseatic League, commonly called the Hansa, was a medieval commercial and defensive network of merchant guilds and market towns in Central and Northern Europe, growing from Lübeck, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and a few other North German towns in the late 12th century. The League expanded between the 13th and 15th centuries and ultimately encompassed nearly 200 settlements across 8 modern-day countries, ranging from what is now Estonia in the northeast to the Netherlands in the west, and extended inland as far south as Cologne and Krakow, Poland, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The League began as a coalition of loosely associated groups of German traders and towns aiming to expand their commercial interest, including protection against robbery. Over time, these arrangements evolved into the League, offering traders toll privileges and protection on affiliated territory and trade routes. Economic interdependence and familial connections among merchant families led to deeper political integration and the reduction of trade barriers. This gradual process involved standardizing trade regulations among Hanseatic cities. So during this time, the Hanseatic League dominated maritime trade in the North and Baltic Seas. It established a network of trading posts in numerous towns and cities. So brothers and sisters, just as a brief understanding of what the Hanseatic League was. Now brothers, I want to read this the next paragraph down because it's going to lead into the Teutonic Order. So even at its peak, the Hanseatic League remained a loosely aligned confederation of cities. It lacked a permanent administrative body, a treasury, and standing military force. The Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, now the reason why I'm highlighting these two here, the Teutonic Order, but let's read on, was often seen as the head of the Huns, both abroad and by some League members. The Teutonic Order was an official member of the Hanseatic League, unique as the only autonomous landed state to hold membership. While other members were city or individual merchants, the Order and the Hanseatic League had a close economic and military interdependency, with many important Hanseatic trading ports falling within the Order's territories, and the Order itself, that being the Teutonic Order, played a role in protecting and organizing Baltic trade networks. So now brothers, so the Teutonic Order is a Catholic and religious institution founded as a military society. Circa 1190, in Acre, Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem. Now one more time brothers, there's a reason why I'm highlighting the Teutonic Order. So now let's get the Grand Master. So the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order is the supreme head of the Teutonic Order. So the Grand Master is obviously the head. Now brothers, as I've mentioned before, when it comes to the Catholic Church in and of itself, that was pioneered and started by so-called black people, going all the way back to Constantine the Great. Yes, Constantine the Great, brothers and sisters, was a so-called black man. I've proved that in past videos by showing icons and a coin that shows Constantine as a so-called black man. Now we're going to look at this Teutonic Order, which is a religious institution. Now brothers, we're going to take a look at one of the Grand Masters of the Teutonic Order looks like. Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, I now present you Albert von Hohenzollern, Albert of Prussia, the first Duke of the Duchy of Prussia, and the 37th Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights. And as you can see, brothers and sisters, he is a so-called black man, mid-brown complexion. These are you Teutonic Knights, brothers. And like it states, he was the Grand Master, basically the head of the order. So-called black man. Now let's take a look at his wife. So now, brothers, this is Dorothea, Princess of Denmark and Duchess of Prussia, also a so-called black woman. This is his wife. And as you can see, she's light-skinned, light-complected. Let's go back to Albert. Show him one more time. One more time, brothers. These were your Teutonic Knights. Okay, so now, brothers and sisters, sticking with the Teutonic Knights, take a look at this portrait here. As you can see, there are several so-called black knights in this portrait. Now, as usual, anytime you get noble looking so-called black people from the Middle Ages, medieval time period, what have you, if they don't go with the African ambassador or exotic African slave, what have you, their number one go-to, like I keep mentioning over and over again, is that they're going to call them Saint Maurice. Now we're going to read a little synopsis at the bottom as to what's going on. So, portrait of several German knights circa 1520. In order to hide true history, the albinos or the Caucasian not only create fake artifacts, i.e. coins, statues, portraits, but they also purposely misidentify real artifacts, as you brothers and sisters already know. Just in part 1 with the portrait of George III, how did they misidentify that? They misidentified that portrait by calling it portrait of an African, portrait of a black man in red coat, misidentified it as Ignatius Sancho or Aluda Aquino, what have you. This is what they do. One more time, brothers and sisters, they know who the people are in all of these portraits, statues, paintings, frescoes, what have you. They know the real identity, but they purposely misidentify them, obviously, because they don't want you to know that so-called black people held rulership in Europe. But let's read on. So in this case, as always, with black knights, they are identified as Saint Maurice. Analyzing this painting, note the knight in white on the extreme left has on his arm a cross insignia. Note also that the central figure carries a flag with the same insignia. The cross they carry is the Iron Cross. The Iron Cross is a cross symbol, typically in black with a white or silver outline, that originated after 1219 when the Kingdom of Jerusalem granted the Teutonic Order, the order of brothers of the German house of St. Mary in Jerusalem. Brothers, we just read that. Now let's take a look at those figures he was talking about. Now take a look at the so-called Black Knights brothers in white. As you can see, they have that cross insignia. You see, to the left. Let's go back to Albert. Just like Albert here, brothers, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights, also with the cross insignia. One more time, brothers, these were your Teutonic Knights. So the cross they carry is the Iron Cross. The cross is a symbol typically in black with a white or silver outline that originates after 1219, when the Kingdom of Jerusalem granted the Teutonic Order, the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, the Black Holy Roman Empire. Yes, brothers, as you already know, so-called black people ruled over the Holy Roman Empire. You know, you had Constantine the Great. You know, when it comes to Byzantium, also ruled over by so-called black people, which then trickled into the Holy Roman Empire. One of the main figures, that being Charlemagne the Great, yes, he was also a so-called black man. So anyways, the right to combine the Teutonic Black Cross placed above a silver cross of Jerusalem, which was a variant of the cross pate. But even more specifically, the central figure seems to be flying a Montenegrin flag. Note also that there is a medieval castle with several other black knights in the background, not showing any religious paraphernalia. Clearly then, the Saint Maurice nonsense is just a typical lie. So let's zoom in, brothers. As we can see the image with the cross of the Montenegrin. That's the central figure here. And take a look at how all of these brothers are dressed. Looking regal, looking noble. And this is what he's talking about, where in the background they had no religious paraphernalia. As you can see, brothers, the knights in the background, so-called black men, dressed noble, dressed regal. But like I said, brothers, they just call this Saint Maurice and entourage. Now, brothers, if this is Saint Maurice and his entourage, then who are his entourage? Who are all the other so-called black knights? As I said, brothers, they love to run with that Saint Maurice narrative, man. You know, let's go back to Albert. You know what? Maybe this is also Saint Maurice also. Maybe this is just light-skinned Saint Maurice. You know what? Maybe this is Saint Maurice also. Maybe this is Saint Maurice in drag. Heck, you know what, brothers? Maybe I'm Saint Maurice. Brothers and sisters that are listening, maybe you guys are Saint Maurice also. Screw it. Let's just go all out with the Saint Maurice narrative. But one more time, brothers, none of the images, statues, portraits, frescoes, paintings, relics, artifacts of so-called black men looking royal, looking regal, looking prestigious, looking noble, spread across the entirety of Europe are portraying Saint Maurice. Saint Maurice is a false identity they give to those artifacts, what have you, to discredit so-called black rulership in Europe. Always remember that, brothers and sisters. Saint Maurice is a lie. Okay, so now, brothers and sisters, we are back in the book, Nature Knows No Color Line, and I've highlighted the part about the patron Saint Maurice and the building in Estonia. So we're going to read it here once again, one more time. So the patron saint of the guild was Saint Maurice, a Negro, foremost Catholic saint of Germany. The ornate building of the guild with its Negro heads still stands in Riga and Revel, Estonia. So let's take a look at that building. Okay, so now brothers, the Brotherhood of Blackheads, a unique medieval club. Now right off bat, what do we see? As we can see, a noble looking so-called black man, falsely identified as Saint Maurice, as usual. Now, before we even read this article, brothers, let's take a look at more of the alleged Saint Maurice images located in Estonia or outside the building. So direct your attention to the right. Now, brothers, all of these are located in that location. Now, take a look at these. That's the one we saw in that article. Here's another. Here's another, brothers. As we can see, that cross symbol one more time. Here's another. So all of these are Saint Maurice all at the same time. Same time too, huh? You know what, brothers? I'm going to have to make a whole separate video revisiting the lie of Saint Maurice, man, because this narrative can't run. It's such a prevalent lie and narrative that they love to put out, man. I really gotta do that video. So you know what, brothers? I'm just going to leave Saint Maurice there for now. Okay, so now, brothers and sisters, I'm going to save Saint Maurice for a separate video. We are now back in the book, Nature Knows No Color Line, and we're going to take a look at more coats of arms, family crest of royal noble families and individuals. So German, note the crowns and the archbishop's mitres. Yes, brothers and sisters, what do crowns symbolize? Crowns symbolizes kingship. Basically, crowns symbolizes rulership. These coats of arms are not slaves or Saint Maurice. And like I mentioned, the Catholic Church was presided over by so-called black people. And that doesn't mean it's righteous, brothers, just because it was so-called black. For those of us who read the scriptures, as we know, Catholicism, the Catholic Church, is just ancient Babylonian teachings mixed in with the scriptures to cause confusion. So for the most part, our people's rulership in Europe was not righteous. But there's always going to be that righteous remnant. So Central European. As I said, brothers, even just think of today. When you think of Central European, are these the type of images that comes to your head? And as we can see, brothers, that double-headed eagle, the insignia, was a symbol mainly used by the Holy Roman Empire, which was ruled over obviously by so-called black people. So families with with names of Negro origin: Upper Holland, Upper Holland, Centre Middle Portuguese, the other German. So Germany again. Coat of arms of a German cardinal. Note the crowns on the Negro's head. One more time, brothers and sisters, I have to keep saying it. None of these are slaves, and none of these are portraying Saint Maurice. So Germany and Portugal. So centre left, arms of Aragon, Spain. Centre right, arms of Kammersburg, Austria. St. Peter's, or St. Peter, former saint and founder of the Catholic Church, is shown as a jet black Negro. Then for those of us who believe in reading the scriptures, read the scriptures. St. Peter had nothing to do with the Catholic Church, brothers, okay? I said Catholicism is all pagan. So centre right, the Black Madonna and Christ of Alt Utting and Bavaria. Lowest left, St. Maurice in the coat of arms of Coburg, Germany. One more time, it's not St. Maurice. St. Maurice is a lie. But yeah, brothers, I'm going to leave this video here for now. Thanks for watching. Hopefully that was an edifying lesson for you brothers and sisters. For those of you who wish to financially support me on this channel for the videos that I make through donations and tips, you can support me on PayPal, Patreon, and YouTube memberships. With that being said, giving all praises to the Most High Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. Deuces.